Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Izobo. I am an international human rights lawyer and a gender advocate. Today, I will be your host on the theme, Women in Governance, Beyond Quota Systems and Representation. Our distinguished speakers are His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, the former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and Her Excellency Minata Samate-Sesuma, the Commissioner for Political Affairs of the African Union Commission. Just a bit of housekeeping. Please use the chat box for your questions and comments. Gender should not determine whether or not a person can be a great leader. Rather, a person's leadership ability should depend on their individual strengths and personality traits. In Africa, women are not adequately represented in leadership and political positions, even though women make up a substantial part of the electorates. Women continue to be underrepresented as voters and in leading positions, whether in elected office, the civil service, the public and private sectors, as well as in academia. This occurs despite women's proven abilities as leaders and agents of change and their right to participate equally in democratic governance. The representation of women in politics and decision-making positions remain low in Africa as a result of barriers such as negative stereotyping of women and men, where it is believed that politics is the territory of men, and the social stigmatization of politics as a dirty game. The unequal division of labor and responsibilities in homes based on unequal power relations limits women's potential to find the time to develop the skills required for participation in decision-making in the wider fora. Other limitations include patriarchy, lack of access to funding for women, weak professional networks, and gender-based violence. As such, women need influential male leaders as allies, particularly leaders who have made powerful statements and done remarkable work in support of a greater number of women in leadership. His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo once said, and I quote, open quote, "No position in government is sacrosanct that a woman cannot occupy." Close quote. No truer words, I tell you, have been said. It is also important for women leaders in Africa to translate the gains of political participation in changing the status and lives of women. Women like Her Excellency Minata Samate-Sesuma have constantly done this, especially in her current position. Today on the webinar, I have with me two distinguished guest speakers, His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo and Her Excellency Minata Samate-Sesuma. I would like to introduce our first guest speaker, His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, who has elected several women into positions of authority during his tenure as the President of Nigeria. Women who got appointed into top government positions due to their personal quality in terms of education and performance in their previous assignments at different areas of the nation's economy. These women have also gone on and continue to make significant strides in Africa and globally. His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo is a household name, a diplomat, an African statesman, a Civil War hero, an administrator, a successful farmer, a nation builder who initiated most of Nigeria's national heritage and a builder of men and women in leadership, and has introduced many Nigerian technocrats to governance. His indelible marks in governance are still very visible. He served as the President of Nigeria from 1999 to 2007 and is one of the most prominent figures in the history of Nigeria. He is well educated, holds a PhD degree in theology, and has published several books. He was the chairperson of the African Union from 2004 to 2006. In 2008, he was inducted by the United Nations as the Special Envoy for Africa. Since then, he has overseen the democratic elections of countries across the African continent, representing the African Union and the ECOWAS. He established a not-for-profit organization called Africa Leadership Forum because of his love for peace and good leadership. I'd also like to introduce and read the biography of our second distinguished guest speaker, Her Excellency Minata Samate-Sesuma. She is the Commissioner for Political Affairs of the African Union Commission. She has actually contributed to redefining political priorities, placing novel items on the African Union agenda that reflect and address women's gender-specific concerns, values, and experiences, and providing new perspective on political issues of the African Union. Her Excellency Minata Samate Sesuma, has served as the director of the United Nations and African Union Hybrid Mission, where she contributed through negotiations and mediation to strengthening peacekeeping operations, humanitarian affairs, and preventive diplomacy. She was the ambassador of Burkina Faso to Ethiopia, permanent representative to the African Union Commission, and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, during which she successfully spearheaded key negotiations of the Permanent Representative Council and actively contributed to the outcome of framework agreements and decisions of the Executive Council and the AU Assembly. Her ardent will for a more integrated and peaceful continent, the Africa we want, and her commitment to good governance, peace and security, and the promotion of human rights and the rule of law, as well as a strong support for women and youth participation in the governance process in Africa, are some of her lifelong advocacies. It is an honor to have both of them join us here today in spite of their hectic schedule. I would like to, ladies and gentlemen, please, His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo. A lot of people, I would prefer to call him Baba, meaning father. I would introduce him so he can give his opening remark. Baba, please, over to you.
Thank you thank you very, very much, Mary. The subject you want us to talk about is women in governance. Before I come to women in governance, I would say that it is very, very important that women participation should be in all human activities. Women participation should be in all human activities. And why do I say this, or why is it so important? As you have mentioned in your brief introduction, women form more than 50% of the population. I think here in Nigeria, they form about 52%. And of course, if they form 52% of the population, it means that if you want to get things done, you cannot leave out 52% of your population. Otherwise, you are getting only 50 or 48% of what you should have got in whichever way you go about it. That's number one. When you have women taking part in anything at all, but we will come to governance later, then you are able to have an all-round view, an all-round understanding, an all-round perspective of what you are doing, because you have all gender. You are able to gender all-round view, inclusive, all-round understanding, an all-round perspective of what you are doing, because you have all gender. You are able to gender all-round view, inclusive, all-round understanding, an all-round perspective. I don't know why that is. What you are doing, because you have all gender. Are able to gender all-round view, inclusive, all-round understanding, an all-round perspective. I don't think. All right.
Okay.
Okay. I think we have solved that. So I said, the second point is that it allows you to have all-round understanding and all-round point of view, all-round perspective. The third point is women, by virtue of their tenderness, soberliness, and all the special attributes of women, you need to have them as part and parcel of any human activity, so that there's the blending, if I can put it that way, of all virtues and all characteristics. Then there is, of course, the fact that we must ensure that we maintain what I call equality of gender. When you keep women away from doing a particular thing or you reserve it for men, then you are discriminating either against or whatever. Now, so for these reasons, among others, women must be able to participate equally as men in all walks of life, in all human activities. But it is particularly of great importance in governance, because governance is the master of all human activities to ensure human development, to ensure human welfare, to ensure human security, to ensure human progress. Politics is the master. Well, there are other activities, economics and all that, even religion. But here, politics is the master. Now, for that reason, you don't leave women out of what is master in terms of the welfare, well-being of humanity, and then think that you have got it right. You will not have got it right. That's number one. Number two, I will emphasize what I said earlier on. There must be equality of gender. There should be no supremacy of one gender over the other. And to the extent that you keep women out of governance, of politics, governance, of statecraft, then to that extent, you make them underling in these activities. So first, there is the need also, the point I made earlier on, if you get women, men together, then you have the overall perspective, even in governance. Because you may see things in a way that that men may see things in a way that women may not be able to see it, and women may see things in a way that men may not be able to see it. I will come up later to give my experience and what I learned in government. Now, what should be the preparation? What should be the preparation of women, more women into governance? The first is what I call popular education, basic popular education. And don't forget that popular education is not even popular, it's not popular among women in some parts of Africa. For two reasons, mainly for cultural or religious reasons and for reasons of poverty. We must, of course, make sure that girl child gets as much education, get as much opportunity for popular education as boy child. That is very, very important. Basic, or what I call popular education. Then higher education. There should be no reason why a girl child cannot go as high as a boy child. I have 8 children that have PhD. 5 of my 8 children are girls and 3 are boys. And yet I have more children who are boys than I have who are girls. But 5 of my girls have PhD, and 3 of the boys, only 3 of the boys have PhD. So higher education, then skill acquisition. There's no skill that a boy can acquire that a girl cannot acquire. Skill acquisition is also very important. And professional training, professional education. Name any profession where men can excel and where you would think that women cannot excel. There's no such profession. So education and general preparation in life, there should be no less preparation for girl child than for boy child. So preparation, first education, and then exposure. Why should the boys have better exposure and in preparation than girls? Don't see any reason. Now, if we now agree that yes, for reasons that I mentioned earlier on gender equality, the virtues of women, the fact that 50%, more than 50% of women make up the population and all that. And you tie that up with the preparation that I have mentioned, what girl child should be made to acquire, made to have in preparation for life, and of course, life generally, and then of course for governance. Now, why have we failed? I said earlier on, we have failed because of religious, which should not be. We have failed because of culture, which should not be. And we have failed because of poverty. Because like in the case of my father, who thought that a girl child should not have education, because the education of a girl child ends up in the kitchen. My junior sister, who was in school for 3 years after I started school, was pulled out after the first year in school, and she led the class. The 1 year she was in school, but my father pulled her out because he said girl child education ends up in the kitchen, which was really misunderstanding, poor awareness of what my father should be aware of. And there's still an element of that in most of our communities, in our countries, in different parts of Africa. Now, there's also some taboo that's attached to, oh look, if a girl, the virtue of girls staying too long in education might be lost. And I don't believe in this. So the preparation must be thorough and must be equal to the preparation of girl child. There should be no taboo. Any taboo should be removed with raising the awareness among the population generally, but particularly among the male population. And women should bring themselves into the forefront. The idea of being reticent or staying back or sliding back should not be. Now, you should be inquisitive, you should be assertive, you should still also be polite. You can be assertive, you can be inquisitive, and still maintain decorum. It shouldn't be, oh, look, my children ask me questions. Why shouldn't I answer? Why shouldn't they ask me questions? And women should be in the forefront of this struggle, and I call it struggle. Women should be in the forefront of it, and women should also find the best way of handling it. After all, you cannot do it alone. Let's get it right. Women cannot do it alone. Now, so if men have to do it with you, and it has to be all hands on deck. Now, these men, they are your fathers, they are your brothers, they are your boyfriends, they are your husbands, they are your cousins. Now, why can't we get them along with us to do what they need to do? Now, there are in governance, there are certain misconceptions. One is that a woman in politics is likely to be corrupt, not corrupt in money terms, but corrupt in in terms of relationship with men. And I don't buy that. I have been in politics with women who are of great decency, very strict, very moral, and very, very honest in their dealings. Now, I think we must take away that there is also the feeling generally that politics is a bad thing and no decent people should not be in it. Again, misperception, misconception, which should be corrected. There's also the feeling that, well, look, home is the place for women. Home, yes. I believe, yes, home is the place for women, but home is the place for men too. Home is the place for women, but home is the place for men too. Yes, and I believe that you can have, if you can have a career as a medical doctor as a woman, you can have a career as a teacher. Now, you can also have career as a politician, as a stateswoman. You can have the same career, you can do better. Now, I will say this, and this is my personal experience, women are more honest in politics than men. Now, my experience with men is we have a meeting at 11 p.m. and you say, well, good night. They go to another meeting. And but women, if you have a meeting with them and you say good night is good night, they go home. Women, and when you see the men the following day, I say, look, when we closed yesterday at 1 a.m., I understand you went to another meeting at 2 a.m. Oh, you say that's politics. Now, what sort of politics is that? Now, women don't go for that type of nonsense and that type of deceit, which they call politics. What can we do? And what must we do? And why quota system? Quota system was to help. I think quota system came out of Beijing, 33 1/3%. It's part of trying to deal with the marginalization, I think let's put it that way, marginalization of women in governance and in some other aspect of life. But for me, as I said at the beginning, it's not just in governance, even in the private sector, in management, every aspect of human undertaking, human activity. Now, what should we do? What I see is that, first of all, we must pay special attention to girl-child education. Let me take Nigeria. There are parts of Nigeria where the gap between girl-child education and boy-child education is as much as 25 to 30%, where you would probably have 70% of boys having popular education or being exposed to popular education, and only 40% of girls. Now, that must be corrected. Now, higher education, we have something here when we look at general child opportunity. And we said there should be marriage age, there should be no child marriage. Marriage age should be minimum of 18 years. I don't see any reason why a child, in fact, the more education, the longer a child stays in school, the better for that child in preparing for life and preparing to be able to look after himself or herself, and in preparing to make contribution to the family life, the community life, the national life, and if you like, making a global contribution generally. Now, so that is very, very important. The other thing is there should be for political parties, there should be some form of special provision for women to give them equal opportunity to, and where it's necessary, to even go for affirmative action for women. We, in my party, when I was I was still in political party as member of one, we make sure that women who are contesting in any election do not have to pay anything for becoming a candidate for electoral office. And men have to pay, but women don't have to pay anything. Then we also, but I believe that political party constitutions now should make provision of probably not less than 35% for executive membership of any political party, for any post to be, any elected post within that any political party. I believe something like that should be the beginning of making sure that we have adequate representation of women in governance. There should also be political education. I've talked of general education, popular education, I've talked of higher education. There should also be political education, which is very, very important. Now, what I do? One of the things that I did both when I was military head of state and when I was elected president, is to bring education, popular education, to everybody. When I was military head of state, I started something we call UPE, minimum of 6 years in primary education for all children. Unfortunately, as soon as I left public office, it was scrapped. When I came back as elected president, democratically elected president, I brought what I call UBE, Universal Basic Education. Not 6 years now, but 9 years. Primary school 6 years, and junior secondary school 3 years. Then some governors went and took me to court that I have nothing to do with primary education. And the Supreme Court stood by them and said they were right, that constitutionally, this should not be the responsibility at the federal or national level. But you cannot, in our own situation where there's so wide a gap, you cannot close the gap unless you have all hands on deck at the local government level, state government level, and federal government level. Again, when I was elected president, I brought 9 women, for the first time, 9 women into government as ministers. It was the first time it was done to make sure that an important ministry, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Finance, even Ministry of Defense, these are things that were unheard of before. So what I will say is that it can be done. It has been done. What is the problem is that it has not been consistently and continually done. We take 2 steps forward and then 1 step aside and 1 step back. And therefore, we haven't made as much progress as we should have. I believe that we should make progress, and there's no way to go about it other than having all hands on deck. That is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baba, for that. Thank you so much, Baba, for that awesome remark. You're already starting to answer some of the questions, which I'm excited about, because I'm looking forward to you answering some of the questions that I actually had prepared for you. This brings us to our next distinguished guest speaker, which I already introduced her, but for some of those that are just joining, she is the Commissioner for Political Affairs of the African Union Commission. Please, ladies and gentlemen, Her Excellency Minata Samate Esuma.
Thank you very much, Mary. Your Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I can say my daughter Mary, as the international human rights lawyer and gender advocate, and also of this important event. Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to be present here in this platform today and to participate in this webinar on the theme Women in Governance Beyond Quota and Representation. I thank you, Mary, and your team for convening, for organizing such a timely event and for shedding more light on the plight of women participation in governance and their representation in decision-making setting. Allow me to recognize and to say thank you to you, Your Excellency Obasanjo. I'm delighted that this meeting, which will discuss this important issue of women participation and representation in governance, we have not only women in the platform, but also gentlemen, as I tend to say, this advocacy for women leadership in governance can only move forward if we associate men and bring them at the table with us to find together the appropriate solution. So I'm warmly express my gratitude to you, Your Excellency. I listened to you, what you did for for Nigeria and also for Africa, and your presence here today is very important for us. And I can say, Your Excellency, our E for she. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation of women is moving. Yes, today theme comes in an opportune time while we are taking stock of the 25 years of Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, and while today we are faced with one of the worst pandemic, coronavirus, and I know women roles is being put in the forefront. The COVID-19 pandemic has shed light in the shortcoming, not only in our healthcare system, but also in our socio-economic and governance fabrics. The women who are the caregivers and the caretakers are left to fend for themselves with little to no assistance from a national institution. But also since Beijing conference in '95, women have had a significant stride in their quest for a more just world and a higher representation in leadership and in governance system. In Africa, the evolution is slow, but we are seeing more policies and action gearing toward women in leadership. To date, only 5 women in the African continent have occupied the position of head of state. They are Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia. We have Joyce Banda of Malawi, Catherine Samba-Panza, Central Africa, Amina Gurib Fakim of Mauritius, and today we are only one, Sahle-Work Zewde, who is the current president of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and the first women to hold this office in Ethiopia. Moreover, we have at the interim head of state, we have Her Excellency Monique Osan Belopo of Mauritius, and Rose Rugombe, acting president of Gabon, Sylvie Kinigi she was prime minister of Burundi, Ruth Perry of Liberia, and Carmen Pereira, interim president of Guinea-Bissau. Many countries, as I said, things are moving, but slowly many countries have appointed women to strategic political positions, such as vice or deputy president. The example of the Gambia, Tanzania, Zambia, Uganda, South Africa, and we have also women ministers of defense in Kenya, South Africa, Ethiopia, and we have in Ethiopia the only minister of peace in Africa. That one is important. In the parliament, we have women. Women are better represented in lower and single house in a few countries like Rwanda, who the country is the best in Africa, and I can say in the world. And we have now South Africa, Senegal, Mozambique. In the continental level, women and men are equally represented in the leadership of the African Union Commission. I think we will come back on that issue. I want to say something about the quota system of women in leadership position. Regarding the ecosystem for women in governance, legislation that supports gender equality in leadership, including legislated quota and reserve seat, is present in about 30 out of 55 countries in Africa. In practice, quota system for parliament and political parties nomination has proved hard to implement and have not translated into effective gender equality in leadership at national level and local level. These quotas are mandated by constitution and many electoral law. Yet, the existence of legislations has not guaranteed equal outcome for women and men in terms of political representation. For instance, 4 of our lowest performing countries, DRC, Mali, Eswatini has legislated quota and reserve seats. And the perception and attitude towards women in leadership, a key component of the ecosystem, also varies across Africa. The role, if I want to say something about the role of the African Union in dealing with barrier, and thank you very much, Your Excellency Obasanjo, you point out many barriers and how we can face, you give us also some solutions. And I want to say that we need to deal with these barriers if we want to see more women taking position in our countries. Even though women represent over half population, you said it, Your Excellency, and make up half of the electorate, they are still facing women barrier in all our country to their representation in leadership position. And African Union adopted measures to deal with this specific constraint. Gender parity in leadership within the African Union is guided by the AU Solemn Declaration that includes a target of 50% female representation in all African Union organ, regional economic communities, our national public services institution, including parliament and judiciaries. The African Union has been therefore striving to push the gender equality agenda forward and advocating for women leadership in the top echelons of our governance system. The African Union makes significant efforts in terms of women empowerment and gender equality on the continent. We have recently, as African Union, developed the AU strategy for gender equality and women empowerment 2018 to 2028 to support our member state and our request for a more gender balanced ecosystem. Moreover, the Department of Political Affairs, in collaboration with UNDP, has recently launched a joint African Union UN initiative based on the African Women Leadership Network, the governance pillar. And this initiative contains an analysis of the ways in which governance systems continue to fail women, but more importantly, it also highlights the experience of women leaders in overcoming impediments to effective participation in different governance systems, including public and private sector. The initiative launched makes clear that the barrier that women face in accessing leadership positions in governance in Africa are overwhelming. They conclude the lack of support, social support, lack of financial means, lack of capacity building opportunities, limited access to technology, root traditional norm, gender discrimination, violence and intimidation, and also lack of education in general. Changing this ecosystem and improving the institutions and the structure that hold women in leadership back is ultimately what we are advocating for in this action plan. The action plan provides also a blueprint to support our member states and all actors with a practical tool for implementation, which is none other than implementing the aspiration of the Maputo Protocol and also African Union Agenda 2063 and the UN Sustainable Development Goals pertaining to women empowerment. 5 pillars are proposed for focus to address the root causes and challenge to the ecosystem for women in governance. Those include leadership capacity development for emerging leaders, access to financing and technical resources for women leaders, implementation of legislation on gender equality in leadership and political processes, discrimination and perception on women in leadership, violence and intimidation done to women, especially during the electoral processes. How can more women get into leadership role despite these barriers and glass ceiling they face? We have some recommendation on how more women can get into leadership role beyond the quota system and representation. And the barriers I mentioned are not a fatality for them to get leadership role. To overcome this handicap, the African Union is advocating stakeholders like member state, our regional economic organizations, civil society, in order to make sure frameworks and namely some recommendations are well implemented. As a recommendation, I can also add to what His Excellency Obasanjo said. We have to improve ecosystem for women in governance. We have to enhance capacity to access to financial and technical resources for women leaders. We have to improve also capacity for existing emerging women leadership, including young women and marginalized women also. We have to promote gender equality, seal certification for the African Union and organ. We have to ensure gender parity in political parties in our countries. We have also to accelerate implementation of legislation on gender equality in leadership and election. We have to close the gap, the big gap between political parties practices and existing legal frameworks. We have to reduce the discrimination, to increase the number of women in political leadership, and roll out African Union UN Women in Governance campaign, working with male and female champions to see all these things happen. We have to sustain peace and prevent violence during electoral processes. So many in Africa during election, we have to work to prevent and reduce. And the strategy for this point are highlighted in the plan of action, but due of time, I want to insist, maybe I can come back in detail by replying to question. And ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I would like to say that African women have been in the forefront of the struggle for freedom for ages. The women leader, I want to insist in your concept note, you raise the issue of Power Day and Power, and the women leaders and the freedom fighter are the one we commemorate each 31st July. They pave the way for this generation of women leaders. I'm humbly stand on the back of these valiant women leaders. We are all grateful for their sacrifices and their continued advocacies. While PAO is offer a national, continental, and global opportunity to recall and affirm the significant role of African women in the evolution of the strong, Pan-African identity with a shared valued objective and vision for the future. The reality and the streets are less visible. The disparity in and inequalities are rampant and in all spheres of our life, and it is happening in decision-making field. The Agenda 23, African Union Agenda, has given us a renewed energy to redirect our effort into changing the narrative. And this is true for women empowerment and representation in leadership. I really do encourage our member states to implement and popularize the relevant framework and civil society organization to be involved more and to advocate to see this all this framework implemented and also finding solution. I would like Mary to say thank you to you for organizing this webinar and all stakeholder and organization organizer of this event. You can see I'm very interested and passionate about this gender issue, and I would like to say thank you to you, thank you to your excellency, and I return the floor to you. Thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you so much, Her Excellency, for that wonderful speech. I have a lot of questions here, and a lot of people have been asking questions, and I also prepared special questions for you and Baba. I would go to the first question. I know Baba was talking about the quota system and the representation. And I realized that in Africa, women in parliament are only 23.6%. And that was in 2018, which has even increased when you compare to 9.8% in 2005, which is below the 30% benchmark that has been identified as the necessary level of representation for women at decision-making levels that has been set by the United Nations Economic and Social Council. It's so obvious that this is a political deficit, and a failure to address it, obviously, again, like Baba says, constantly perpetuates gender inequality and undermines the value of democratic governance. Regarding, and constantly, we have conversations constantly about this deficit and public awareness around more women in governance. Baba, can you please share with us what you did differently during your time as president to ensure women are in leadership positions? I can count so many women that are doing fantastically well in Africa and globally that I know they worked in your government. So if you can share what you did that even after out of government, they are still doing well. These are women that in Nigeria that we can talk about the top 5 women in Nigeria currently. So please share with us your experiences so we can learn from it.
Well, first of all, when I got into government, I came out of prison for almost 3.5 years. I came out, so I was more or less in the dark. By the time I came out, there have been computer and what you call internet now. The time I went into prison, there was no internet. And when I came back, there was, my boss prepared my table, my office. They put a computer there. I've never used a computer. And then they came and said, look, you download. I said, oh, you download, this is how you download. How do you upload? Then they say it's nothing like upload. That's now I just say that. But the point was that I went in, and the first thing that surprised me was that I had women campaigning with me, and we went to places. But when I asked people to nominate the governors, to give me names of people who could be ministers, they didn't. Only one governor included a name of a woman. All others gave me the name of women, the name of men. But fortunately, as I said, around campaigning. So before I got the ministers, I also picked some women and men. I say, look, these are men and women who I have seen in the course of campaigning that bring on board as ministers. And I included, and so when governors who are all men didn't submit names of women, I picked women myself who have interacted with during the campaign, who have interacted with when we had, I think it was 1 week of retreat, we call it. So the point is that you must also be able to fish out. And of course, I fish out the like of Ngozi, the like of Obi. Obi went to World Bank. Ngozi became managing director in World Bank and is still going strong. Obi is still going strong. Joy Ogu became a permanent representative in the UN. So the point is this: they are women of caliber, women of caliber. Now you have to fish them out. And they're everywhere in all walks of life. You have to fish them out. You have to give them opportunity. What we normally do is we deny them opportunity just because of gender, not because of any other thing. Now you will hear, you see, we have some derogatory remarks. You see, well, in my part of the world, let's say this: we have a male chauvinistic society, community. And you say, hey, a woman, me to be under a woman. What is wrong for you to be under a woman? If a woman is good, you bloody well be under a woman. Why not? Then I could say, look, a woman who urinates from behind. Now, where do they, that's in our culture. No. So there is this sensitive, I don't know, should I say sensitive? No, but we have to get rid of it. And it should start from the home. It should start from the home. Now, my first child is a girl. Yabo. What betide you in my own family that you do anything and you keep Yabo out? Now, you know that thing is a failure. You have failed. And when siblings are planning something, and I say, oh, yeah, but they are not counting on you. You say, Daddy, leave them out. Leave them, I will deal with them. And of course, he will deal with them. Now, in our own culture too, there is preference for male children. In our own family, we have no preference. We maintain hierarchy. Now, I joke with the younger ones. I say, well, look, it's not my fault that you came late. So you have to give, you have to observe the hierarchy of the way you came into the world, the position. But I think, again, in the home, we must give preference as that are due to girl's child, as we must not put them under, and then look for the best. You will get them, and they're there. They're there.
Thank you so much, Baba. Thank you for telling everyone also out there, being a voice of reasoning, being an ally to us as women, to show that if you can do it, and if you had done it, and if this woman, like you mentioned, Obi Ezekwesili, Okonjo-Iweala, are doing great things in Africa, not just in Africa, actually globally, then every other girl child like myself and every other person out there can actually do it. My second question goes to Her Excellency, Minata Sesuma, is, have you as a woman in a leadership position actually experienced a glass ceiling that women normally do. I'll take an instance of there has been an increasing emphasis on granting women access to decision-making by a minimum of 30% representation. Now, you find out that countries have actually taken, efforts, I would say, for women to actually occupy parliamentary seats based on quotas, reserved seats, and then the voluntary party allotments. But there's still a long way to go as the progress is really slow. Now, I know it might not have been easy for you to get there, but how were you able to overcome these glass ceilings to get to where you are today?
Thank you very much, Mary. If I have to explain, it will be long, but let me say that the first thing, and Baba said it, is education. You said about a long way. If I grow with my grandparents and they believe in me, they send me to school, they don't remove, and Baba told about a child marriage. They didn't remove me to give me a husband, and they accompany me. The first thing is education and the support of family and the belief of parents to say women, boys and girls are equal. We can send them, we can accompany them, we can support them. That is the beginning. And yes, I started when I continued studying, and finally when I started my career early, and at that time the gender equality frameworks that are popular nowadays were less popular. It was a hard time for me. Women had less opportunities than men, and at that time I had my fair share of no's yes before the yes. It was very difficult for me. To give you an example, I remember when we finish, we come back. I come at the top level when we finish diplomatic school, but I was the last to move from foreign affairs to go to embassy as a career diplomat career, but only saying you are a woman and you are married. And they said, yes, we can let you go without your husband and you can go alone. But I said, no, if it is the right for all women to be appointed, I will wait my turn. It took me 10 years to fight, but finally I succeeded in fighting. And also to say to our young leaders, young girls and young people like you, Mary, never give up, continue fighting. And about the parliament, the 20%, we have to continue fighting and the success will come.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. And that takes me to another question for Baba. Baba, you had mentioned that it's good to have that quota system. But then a lot of African countries have tried to make sure that women are in those positions. Just, isn't it more like having quota systems? Yes, it can increase the greater representation of women numerically, but it doesn't necessarily make them substantively participate in governance, where it's more, women are just then put as, oh yes, we do need 30% representation. We put them in there, but increased representation has not really had any significant effect on policy outcomes for women. And so if women are as qualified as men to lead, why is there a huge disparity between men and women when it comes to leading?
Well, the quota system is only temporary wherever it is practiced. It is, you have a problem and you want a partial solution. Quota system is not the permanent solution. It's partial solution to a problem. And I have seen even women who say, look, don't count me with the social system. I want to take my part, my place as a human being with other people. And they took their place with other people, and they excel. Now, I would say as a stopgap, so, quota system or affirmative action, whatever you call it, will need to be in place. But when you get to the point where with education, popular education, with higher education, with professional education, with skill acquisition, women are at par with men. There will be no need for quota system. Women will take their place, and that should be the utmost, the ultimate that we should all aspire to, where there is no question of quota system, no question of affirmative action, but a person, male or female, is taking on his or her face value, what is capable of doing, what his or her qualities are, and she takes her place and her role and play it, and you accord her position based on her merit, based on what she can do, not based on, I don't like the idea of feeling, well, condescending. Well, you cannot get there, so we give it to you. That's why. And the more you do that, the more people look down on those who even get there on quota system. But what we said at the AU, and my sister referred to it, was that, look, it's not a matter of quota system. We have equal number of men and women as commissioners at the AU. And there are men and women. And most of these commissioners that I have seen at AU, both men and women, most of them are competent. And the point is that it is not, quota should be used only when you are trying to solve to have a temporary solution. The permanent solution is people having been given opportunity on their ability or merit.
Thank you so much, Baba, for that answer. I think it's actually saved a lot of us who's been wondering and constantly asking, yes, you have quota systems, but is that enough? And that takes me to a question for Her Excellency, Minata Sesuma, is that someone says here, Olufemi Olubemiro, and that is in line with the question I was supposed to ask you. So I'll just merge all of them together and ask you the same question. Now, he says that creating a quota system, I believe, only stifles women's capacity, which is exactly what Baba has said. It gives the perception that women are being given, air quotes, their position. What we need, again, is what Baba constantly said, is there's no need for a quota system. What we need is an equal playing field where men and women are both given, everyone is given an opportunity, everyone is given the floor to actually lead. What has the African Union Commission done to ensure that women are in leadership positions beyond the quota systems and representation?
Thank you very much. As His Excellency Obasanjo said, we have 5 men, we have 5 women. We are working, and it is, as I mentioned, it is in the line of the Agenda 2063 with Aspiration 6, which state that in Africa, whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially its women and youth, and caring for children. We are fighting also to have this equality at regional level, and at the regional level, we provide guidance to have this parity. And the common issue rise is the lack of funds, as I said, for for women. But I fully agree that giving women opportunity, it is very, very important at national level, international level, at African Union. We need more opportunity to change the narrative. And coming back of this system of quota, especially for parliament, I was thinking, and some countries already have, to be sure that we will have this equality is one man, one woman, to be sure that at the end we will have this parity. And in the process of reform, we will, from 10 elected members, we will be, commission will be with 8 elected members, and we have this aspiration, this saying, 4 men, 4 women. If the chairperson is a man, the deputy should be a woman, and vice versa, and we will have a total 4-4. And I think it is very important we have our strategies on gender equality at all levels, and our member states should work also, especially politicians, to be sure that we will have this equality, but giving opportunity to women, and also to go beyond these barriers we have now.
Thank you so much for that question. Baba, over to you. I have a question for you. And the next question is, how can these barriers that women face? I remember when Her Excellency Minata Sesuma was sharing her story, she was grateful to her family, at least, that they were able to give her education, they were able to support her to where she got to now, even without all of these international laws and conventions that have been put in place to support women in leadership, or even actually promote gender equality. I know you mentioned also barriers, traditional, religious barriers, social cultural barriers, political barriers. How can we actually avoid these barriers? I mean, maybe it's not, you cannot necessarily say you want to avoid it, but maybe alleviate it to a point where women can actually take up leadership and political positions, as you did during your time.
Well, Mary, the point really is this. Most things you will never get on a platter of gold.
True.
Now, you have to go for it. You have to exert yourself for it. You have to grab it. And this is the truth. Women, the first thing I said is education. And I'm happy that my sister, the commissioner in AU, emphasized that. Education, because if you don't have education, you cannot even develop the innate ability that God has given to you. And if you cannot develop the innate ability that God has given to you, how can you be of immense help to yourself, to your family, or be of service to humanity in general? So education is important. And I've said we have to start from home. In some homes, you will be telling, oh, look, we have something in Yoruba. They say that boys have 9 bones, girls have 7 bones. Now, I don't know who said there's difference in physiology of boys and girls. I'm not a medical person, but except for the part for the reproductive system that is different, I believe that physiology of man and woman is the same. But we have this nonsense, again, to show that women are weaker than men. So we say women have 7 bones and men have 9 bones. That type of nonsense should be discarded. We should make sure that we say, look, women are as able and as men, depending on the DNA the nurture, how they are brought up, what exposure they have, and then don't put women under, don't put girl child under boy child because of culture or because of religion or because of poverty within the family. Let them grow up on the same basis and give them equal opportunity. Give them equal nurture in the sense that they grow up and they meet. I have seen for instance, in my part of the world, the feeling is that women cannot be good farmers. I have seen women who are better farmers than men. Now, maybe it's a thing of old because of the hazards and the tedium of farm work, but now you don't need to carry cutlass and hoes. And I've seen farmers that are women and they are performing better than men. So the first thing is education. The second thing is whatever restriction or hindrance we have by culture, by religion, by illiteracy, by ignorance, we remove them through enlightenment, through awareness, and through education. The third is that at home, let there be no question of boys being in ascendancy over girls, and give them equal opportunity. And then, of course, when you have a bit of challenge, let them face challenge together. Let's have them face solving problem together. And you'll find that girls are as good, if not better than boys.
Thank you so much, Baba, for such encouraging words. I feel like now I'm indomitable. I can do anything I can do. And I'm sure it's the same for so many other people who are actually listening in, the participants who are actually listening in, to actually know that we have an ally, we have someone who constantly supports us and constantly stands for us so that our voices can be heard. It takes me to the next question now is for Her Excellency Minata Sisuma. And it is, it takes the last response. You had responded that Africa needs young African leaders. The question is, how has the African Union Commission ensured the effective participation of young African leaders, not just young African leaders, young African female leaders in the youth program of the African Union?
Thank you very much. You know, we have, when we resume our duties at African Union as elected members, we were part of the team of year on youth. How we can have this youth, young generation as an advantage for the development of Africa. And as the African Union, we place a great emphasis in young African female leaders. And we have a AU youth program as mentioned, and we have young Africans are given the opportunity to come to join us at African Union as young professionals and are with us in our different departments, depending on the study and also depending on their interest in all these processes. We ensure that the gender aspect is balanced enough, and young women are particularly encouraged to apply, and it is important for them to apply and to join us. And the chairperson also has appointed the first the youth special envoy, who is a very young and dynamic lady, Miss Ayashebi. her voice reinforced our conviction that women, especially young female, must be given the opportunity to lead, the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to be the leader of tomorrow. These are the comments I can. We are working at, and we are encouraging our member states also to do so. And you can see now we have very young women minister, less than 30 years. We have now some of women ministers and occupying different responsibilities, which is encouraging, but not enough. We have to do more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I cannot see Baba, so I will just go ahead and ask you the next question while I wait for him to join us again. The next question is, what does Africa need to do to address the barriers? Because you and Baba, during your speech and your remarks, you mentioned, okay, Baba is back, so I'm just gonna go back and ask him the question. Welcome back, Baba. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask you your question. As an influential male leader, what and how can men be part of the solution? Because yes, you've been able to talk about the barriers that women face and how we as women, which you've also started another quote for me, which is, I'm just gonna read it quickly. Most things you will never get on a platter of gold. You have to exert yourself and grab it. So that is another quote from you now that I just collated. But now the question is, aside for women, we going out to grab it. What about the men? How can men be part of this solution and support more women in governance?
Maria mentioned this earlier on.
Okay.
One, we have to raise awareness. Some men just don't know, and we have to educate them. And we have to go about it gently and making them realize. Some don't know. I've told you that, look, there's this thing in my own culture that women have 7 bones, men have 9 bones. Now, what nonsense is that? We have to tell people that, look, the physiology of men and women are the same. And you can show them with the skeleton of men and skeleton of women and show them that the bones are the same. Now, that's number one. We have to educate men and educate women about gender equality. And the first thing, the best thing to say is that, look, if you have a population of 100 and 50 of them are not employed, are not engaged in the business that everybody should be engaged in, to that extent, you are underproducing, you are underperforming as a nation. And therefore, let us get all hands on deck in all walks of life. And that's number one. Again, I said that, look, these men are your own men. There is no person that I know that hasn't got a father, even if it's in vitro. There must have been a father to produce a child. Now, so make use of these fathers. You must have brothers, not in aggressive manner, not in insulting manner, not in a manner that would put them off. My dear brother, do you know that this and that? And when you even interact with them, they will see that, because they can play their prank, which you don't have to take part in, but you can also subdue them. You can bring them to understand the point, and you make that point very well. I made it very early in my presentation, that you need men. This cannot be a woman affair alone to get women to equality of gender. in all walks of life. You need men. And the way to get the men is to make them be aware, use them, educate them, involve them, just as you are involving me now. Mary, you decided to bring my sister and bring me on board. Why didn't you make it a women affair? You didn't make it a women affair because you are thinking of gender balance, gender equality, my own point of view as a woman, as a man, and as a man leader. And as my sister called me, now they call me he, she, which means they refer to me as he, she, because of my view on this. And I think what you need to do is have more he, she's at all level, at the younger level, at the medium age level, and at the older age level. Let us have more he, she's, and that we will understand and will be promoter or champions of gender equality, because that's all we are asking for, gender equality. We are not asking for women to be over men. We are not asking for men to be over women. We are asking for equality. And God has created us equal. And there's no reason why men should put other human beings as underling.
Thank you so much, Baba, for being a he for she. I know you say that, you know, you are an ally, but indeed you're more than an ally now. You're officially a he for she. And thank you for calling other men to become he for she's.
He for she.
He for she, yes.
He for she.
This takes me to my next question for Her Excellency Minate Sesu, which is, what does Africa need to do to address the barriers that face women in leadership positions? So this is not just about the African Union, but a call out for Africa as a continent. What can Africa as a continent do to ensure that these barriers are actually hold women against holding political positions are actually eliminated?
Thank you. I will start by African Union level. We have a president who is the champion, is the president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, who is a champion of on women affairs, women to encourage, to fight, to sensitize the peers, and also dignitary to go for empowerment of women to address the barrier. And we have a fighter, and he for she in our commission, President Faki Mahamat is fighting. And to give example, he has more women in his cabinet than men. And also we have department on gender issues to be sure that we have a good strategy to sensitize our member state and to implement all legal instruments. And we have also special envoy on these issues. Now coming to our African member states, you know, before some men used to say, yeah, we don't have enough qualified women to occupy the leadership position. It was before, but now we cannot no longer say that we don't have enough. We have strong women. Many of us are educated. We have a very, very impressive CV, and we need to exercise due diligence when in charge of these women qualified. And we are working as African women leadership with network, how we can encourage young generation in our member state with pillar, with also to implement all this thing in our African countries. And you know, barriers are sometimes a little bit difficult. We need, and I appreciate, thank you very much, Baba, for when you insist to have men with us. We have husbands, we have brothers, we have sons, we have to have all these people on board. Without them, we cannot address this barrier. Sometimes it is difficult. You can have a woman, a wife, she wants to go in politics, but the husband will say never. We have to continue sensitization. We are doing so. That's why I was explaining in my opening remark that we have our plan of action to see more women in politics, naturally with contribution and the implementation of this plan of action by our REX, our member state, and our civil society, and all of us. We have to work together if we want things to change in Africa, to have more E for she.
Thank you so much, Her Excellency, Minata Sisuma. Thank you so much, Baba, for joining us today. We've taken so much of your time, way more than we could have imagined, but what is there not to think about when you have such a huge well and wealth of knowledge that we really want to drink from and we really want to tap from. So Baba, if you want to give us a closing remark, something, a word you want to leave with us so that it can always remain with us as always. Baba, you are muted, so nobody can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I say I would want, among the takeaways by everybody listening, is that one, we will continue to be underperformed unless we have equal opportunity for the two genders. We have equality of gender and equal opportunity. We will underperform. It doesn't matter whether it's in governance or in any other walks of life in the private sector. So there should be no disparity. There should be equal opportunity. And it can be done. That is the other point. It can be done. Those who are pretending it cannot be done, the excuses they give are selfish and self-centered excuses. They may give, as I said, excuse of religion, excuse of culture, excuse of poverty. They are all selfish and self-centered excuses. And that the point, again, the third point is that women must realize that they cannot achieve this alone. They have to work with men. And these men are your own men. They are not strangers to you. They are not outsiders to you. They are your own men, your fathers, your sons, your brothers, your uncles, your cousins. They are your own men. And make your husbands make use of them and let them know that, in fact, you are complimenting them. You are not taking away from them. If their fear is that, oh, if you are equal, you will, in fact, make them feel comfortable that if we are equal, then we have more. And the more we have, the better it is. Let them feel comfortable and work together with us.
Thank you so much, Baba. Thank you so much. Despite your Herculean schedule, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for being a he for she. Thank you for being a woman's ally and a front runner in the journey of politics and governance in Africa. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a good evening. Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask you one more question. Then you please give your, or I think I'll just let us give a closing remark. But there's one important question that I wanted to. No, you actually did answer the question already in your introduction. So that is fine. I would like you to give a closing remark, a word that, or words of wisdom, because you are a woman and you feel our pain, I would say, in terms of getting there, being in governance and in leadership. What are your words of advice for us?
Thank you very much. I have always advocated for men involvement in the solution finding aspect of women empowerment in their engagement in leadership. Women alone, we cannot fix all this injustice, and men should be at the table, and strategy, a solution must be jointly decided in order to have their buy-in into it. And if I have to say something, the continent now, we have many provision for women participation in governance. We cannot say there is a lack of that. We need women leadership and decision making. We have many fora. Now we need concrete action, how we can do it. And we have all documents to do it. Indeed, the use of quota or other framework can help correct this imbalance within the institution. However, although the quota system is intended to increase the number of women in decision-making bodies, it is necessary to be vigilant for the quota not to be used for purpose other than to what it is intended for, effectively improve the representation of women in decision making. And also that's why we have this program. I insist on it too. And this program, when we discuss, we show clearly that women still face this problem, and sometimes these things are appalling, and it is therefore analyze the failure, and Obasanjo insists on the failure of governance system with a strong marginalization of women or discrimination. We need to highlight the experience of women in order to overcome the obstacle and for an effective participation of women in different sectors that include public and private, and also I insist on the lack of finance. That is also a problem, and a lack of opportunities. And now we have this new technology, we have discrimination against women in these technology issues. We need also to tackle this issue. In conclusion, and maybe some recommendation, I would like to say that we need to meet the challenges of women political participation and create conditions to protect women, including physical violence as intimidation. I saw this intimidation and violence in some countries in Africa. We need to find a solution. We need also to remove this obstacle, and we have to work together. We have a legislation, and we need to implement our strategy on this matter. We need also education and capacity building. That is for successful leadership. If we don't have more women educated, we don't remove them to marry them, we don't create a barrier, we will have successful leadership. We need to train them, we need education, and appropriate arrangement must be made for the improvement of women leadership capacity. It is essential to work with political parties, with all, and to have deliberate policies and affirmative action within the party, which would guarantee more and more women at the top in the strategic position. It is also essential to improve opportunities for especially young leaders, our young women leaders, and to thrive by creating and institutionalizing space for them. As I mentioned, we have our youth envoy, and to encourage our member states. In my part, I have personally made it my life mission to advocate for women empowerment, including women in leadership, in decision making, and I will keep doing it until we no longer need to fight for it. I suffer. I don't want our daughters, our sisters, our children, young generation to suffer. We can avoid that one. That as my conclude remark, and thank you very much for the occasion given to us to share our experience. And I am happy to be with our Excellency E for she, and we encourage so many participants to continue to work together. We need everybody, not only women, we need all men to be part. And if we do so, we can have the Africa we want. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Her Excellency Minata Sesuma, for that. I don't know how to call it. The closing remark was very thunderous, if that makes any sense. But thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for leading the path for others to follow when it comes to women's political participation and governance in Africa. Seeing you as the AU Commissioner for Political Affairs shows that I can also do it. Shows every other young lady out there, whether old or young, that they can actually do it. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you that despite your busy schedule, you were able to share your story and share insights with us on the African Union Commission, the African Union, and yourself. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Merci.
You should try your French also, as I tried my English.
Mais le problème, c'est maintenant, les gens ne parlent pas l'anglais. C'est ça le problème. Mais ça va,
bien,
on parle l'anglais. Ça va.
Ah ouais, ben c'est bien, continuer. Et ça fait partie aussi de qui pour réussir aussi, il faut avoir au moins 2 langues, pas forcément anglais, français, mais
c'est vrai,
anglais ou autre chose. Voilà, beaucoup de courage et merci.
What she's saying is everyone has to learn to speak at least 2 languages. So if you do not know how to speak languages, you have to try to speak 2 languages. Merci, Son Excellence. Merci.
Okay.
Au revoir. Bonne soirée.
Bye.
Thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. I will just recapitulate what both panelists have actually said. His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, some of us like to call him Baba, meaning father, and Her Excellency Minata Samate Sesuma, who have actually shared their insights, their experiences with us on women in governance beyond quota systems and representation. I would like to say a few words before I actually close the webinar. I would say that it's worthy to know that even though quota systems, affirmative action policies, and legislations are not sufficient to bring about change, just the way Baba and Her Excellency Minata Sesuma have said, it is necessary to make it a step towards bridging gaps, challenging gender stereotypes, and increasing the visibility and representation of women in governance. There is no one-size-fits-all resolution to gender inequality in politics, but there is plenty that should be done to ensure that women's voices are heard. Now, I'll just recapitulate what Baba and Her Excellency Minata said on the webinar, that we have to have equality of gender, basically gender equality. As women, we must be assertive but polite. Also, we need to prepare, because preparation meets opportunity. We need to go through education, be exposed, and ensure that our voices are heard. And for Her Excellency Minata, we also have to raise awareness. If you can, in your little corner, your local community, wherever you are, please raise awareness regarding women in leadership and gender equality. We need to also educate men and women about gender equality, and we need to have he for she's. So if you're a man listening to this webinar today, please become a he for she. Please become an ally for women's participation in not just politics, and everywhere, like Baba said. Also, like Her Excellency Minata said, we need to improve opportunities for young leaders, not just young leaders, especially female leaders. And then, as they will say, Baba says, charity begins at home, which means that we can't just say we want to practice it outside. If you have a girl child, you need to be able to give her opportunity. The same opportunities you give to your male children, you should be able to give to her. So in the words of Madeleine Albright, National Democratic Institute's chairman, women in politics can be counted on to raise awareness, can be counted on to raise issues that others overlook, to support ideas that others oppose, and to seek an end to abuses that others accept. So I join everyone today to let their voices be heard in the quest for gender equality. Thank you so much for being part of the webinar today. There will be another webinar on the 4th of September. So please, please, please feel free to join so that our voices can come together while we advocate for gender equality. Thank you all so much for joining, and have a good evening. Bye-bye.